The stated purpose for the second voyage was to convert the indigenous people to Christianity in the name of the Catholic monarchs of Castile and Aragon. This time, Columbus was given a much larger fleet, comprising of 2 naus and 15 caravels, including the Nina, which was to be the first ship to return to the New World. On September 25, 1493, the fleet sailed from Cadiz on the southwestern coast of Spain. This time, the fleet did not stop by the Canary Islands, but instead sailed straight across the ocean sea. On November 3, 1493, they landed on an island that Columbus immediately renamed and is known to this day as Dominica. He continued to sail north along the Lesser Antilles, renaming islands as he came across them. Some of these names, or a version of those, are used even today, including Montserrat, Antigua, St. Croix, and the Virgin Islands. On November 19th, he arrived at what is today known as Puerto Rico. Here, one of Columbus's crew members recounts the Europeans were able to rescue some women and children who were being held captive for the purpose of sexual slavery by a native Carib tribe. On November 22nd, Columbus returned to the island of Hispaniola and to La Navidad, the settlement he had created during the first voyage with 39 men and the wood from the hull of the Santa Maria. However, he learned that the men he had left behind had gotten into a dispute with the natives and were all killed. Columbus charged a Taino chief named Caonabo with the killing of his men, and the subsequent capture of Caonabo in 1494 would lead to the first native uprising against the Europeans in the Americas. Having lost La Navidad, Columbus established a new settlement, which would also remain short-lived, called La Isabela. He looked for some more gold and established a fort in the interior of the island. On April 24th, he left Hispaniola and arrived on the southeastern coast of Cuba on April 30th. Following this, he sailed across to the island of Jamaica, reaching the coast on May 5th. Sailing for a few days along the northwestern coast of Jamaica, he continued back to Cuba and sailed along its southern coast before heading back to Jamaica and then Hispaniola. Interestingly, he didn't circumnavigate Cuba and therefore thought it was a peninsula of China rather than an island. Columbus arrived back on Hispaniola on August 20th and continued to explore the coast. He fell seriously ill by the end of September, causing his men to land back at La Isabela. Having spent almost a year and failing to find the riches and gold he had promised the monarchs, as well as the settlers, Columbus decided to look at other methods to generate revenue. He sent a letter to the monarchs proposing to enslave some natives, such as the more hostile Caribs. This proposal was refused by the crown, but that didn't stop him from enslaving 1,600 Arawaks, who were peaceful and welcoming to the Europeans. 560 of these slaves were sent to Spain, of which only 360 survived the journey. Following legal proceedings in Spain, the survivors were ordered to be released and sent back to their native lands, only to be re-enslaved by Columbus and his men. He also set up forced labor camps for the natives on the island that, in the words of his son Ferdinand, is described as follows. In the Cibao, where the gold mines were, every person of 14 years of age or upward was to pay a large hawk's bell of gold dust. All others were each to pay 25 pounds of cotton. Whenever an Indian delivered his tribute, he was to receive a brass or copper token which he must wear about his neck as proof that he had made his payment. Any Indian found without such a token was to be punished. The natives who were found without a copper token had their hands cut off, leading to many of them bleeding to death. Furthermore, the belief of abundance of gold on the island turned out to be a myth. Therefore, a lot of natives could never meet the quotas set up by Columbus, resulting in many of them committing suicide. Meanwhile, the Spanish settlers were stricken with disease and famine, causing nearly 2/3 of them to die since their arrival on the island. The conditions were nothing like the lofty and beautiful mountains, great farms, groves and fields, most fertile both for cultivation and for pasturage, as described by Columbus after his first voyage. Settlers wrote to the sovereigns, describing the decrepit conditions on the islands and the cruelties on the natives conducted by Columbus's captains and appointees. However, Columbus's own letters still provided the rosy picture he had originally described to them. Unsure of which account to believe, they decided to send Juan de Aguado as special commissioner along with limited provisions for the settlements to investigate and report back. When Aguado arrived at Hispaniola, he found the Spanish colonists, including Columbus, to be severely ill. The supplies that he brought from Spain were rapidly dwindling, and so Columbus decided to head back to Spain to ask for more help from the monarchs. He prepared 2 ships, one for himself and one for Aguado, along with 200 disillusioned Spanish colonists and 30 native prisoners. He left Hispaniola on 10th March 1496, roughly 2.5 years since his second arrival to the islands, and reached Cadiz on 11 June 1496, marking the end of his second voyage.